Very much for joining us for our very first WPG Academy Master Series. We are very, very delighted to have once again Kai. I know everyone had tremendous value from your feedback last year, so we're delighted to have you again. Thank you for coming.
Yes, pleasure. I didn't know it was the first one, actually.
Yeah, this the Academy, the rebranded Academy. This is the
Yes.
first one of the Master Series. So yes, you are the
Cool.
first one.
Cool.
So
It's nice being here. Nice being
yes,
here.
thank you so much. I would chat forever, but I think we've got you're so popular and so many people want to play to you that we should probably crack on, if that's all right.
Yes, let's do that.
All right, so we're going to go to Slovenia first.
Hello, greetings.
Hello.
Hi.
Jan, so if you want to just introduce yourself to anyone watching and Kai as well and say a little bit about what you're going to be performing, that'd be great.
Of course. Big pleasure. So I am 23. I come from Slovenia. I just finished Master 1 in Copenhagen. And currently my main teachers are Anders Kan Elton and Johan Bridger and also Søren Monrab. Before that, I was here in Ljubljana, where I am right now. My teacher was Simon Klauser. Maybe you've heard of him. He studied with Alexei in Gerasim's in München.
Yeah.
I think also Peter Sadlo. He was his main teacher. So yeah, today I have some Bach prepared. I think one of them is from Lute Suite E minor, the guitar one.
Yeah.
Oh, the guitar one, the lute one, yeah. And keyboard partita, one movement from there, I think as well. So yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
Perfect. With which one do you want to start? Allemande?
Yeah, let's do that one.
All right, let's hear the Allemande.
Yes. Well done. Nice. I liked it a lot. It was very obvious that you're studying in Copenhagen with the background.
Yes, true. Good point.
Nice. No, very nice, because I see that you had a lot of ideas and you implemented them based on the ornamentations. This is actually, it's always in early music, it's a big difference if people are playing always just what's written, and if people are playing in the end based on the ideas, based on the rules, right? Which are very important, and to know them is the next thing. I wanted to use the chance talking to you about basically how to reproduce your ideas, which I really appreciate, and I totally agree on that they come out a bit more strong, because of course the original is based on the lute, which is also a fantastic instrument, also the closest to us in early music. I always find it very difficult if we have cello suites, for example, which are having a total different sound production, and it's difficult to find the right translation based on the original idea. So the lute suites and also the cembalo, coming to this one later, is a fantastic chance because we can understand it better. It's also closer to us, the original idea, we can translate them good. So coming to that, what we need is in the end, it's about transparency. Let's talk about this. Transparency about first of all the music. Second of all, if we know we have the lute, which is a particular, very percussive sound, right? Therefore, comparatively close to the marimba or to any other, percussion instrument. In the end, we need to understand the music a bit more clear. It might be the recording, because of course I don't hear you live, and I hear you over the headphones, but especially in this extremely rich, extremely intense music, because basically somebody's playing trombone in the background.
Oh no. Okay, muting.
I was like, is this me? No. So in the end, we need to have all this tonality, dense music. We have to have it a bit clearer heard. And this is where it gets technical for us. We have to translate it in a technical way to reproduce it accordingly. For example, the ornamentation, as intelligent and as beautiful you play them, you have to find the limit on the instrument where we understand them or where we are not very clear how many turns you're going to play, right? So if you take the lute, it's very obvious, it's very clear. It's very clear how you can even see it on the chord board. And take this as a good idea for your own play, on your own translation on the marimba, that it gets transparent, not that it fades away, fades out, that we don't understand where's the resolution, how many turns, something like this. Because again, your ornamentation is fantastic, but it would need to be a bit more brilliant, because it's in the end your personal note on this interpretation. It's your interpretation, not a second one, not a third one, it's yours. And the ornamentation is one of the biggest aspects of it. So if you play them too shady, then the effect of them is taken out. This is, I think, very important. And the next thing, which is basically connected to the topic, is you have to be a bit more careful on the positions on the bars. This is, of course, a lot of marimba talk, which I'm opening up. Everybody talks about mallets and bars and whatever. In the end, personally, I don't care where you hit them. I'm very open. But when you hear that they sound different based on the positions where you strike them, then we can start to argue, because it's based on music, not about technique. Because again, if you play Masser, if you play Stevens, if you play traditional, I really don't mind. That's always just our own homework, how to reproduce it. But be aware where the notes sound best. For me, actually, even on my own keyboards, I know the spots where the sound is accordingly varying on the same bar. Even if I hit it on the center or center left, center right, it all changes based on this wooden material. Each set of bars basically is different. And in the end, it's the same for you. You have to listen very clear which instrument and how the wood reacts. And of course, coming to the big topic, if you hit it on the, let's call it black keyboard, if you hit it there on the edge or on the center, that's a big topic, because we hear it, especially in the in the melodic transition, or in the bass, if you have, especially in the bass, if you have the center and then you hit one of the black keys, we hear that. So if possible, as much as possible in the center, please. And this is again also about the transparency, the next thing, because you're creating less this tuk percussive note, and you have more resonance if you're in the center. So the whole sound opens more up, so it connects also more beautiful if you take it with a lute as resonant as reference. So I know this is the fantastic thing, the technical reflection from coming from Copenhagen. I see it from your teachers as well, and you do it. You do a very nice job. This is nice, and especially about this idea. Try as much as possible to listen what happens based on where you hit it. The ornamentation, quickly, I had one idea. It's the first one you take from the one, right? If you use the first of all, give a little bit more weight, that we hear it, and let it a bit more floating, as much as is very healthy and very intelligent, to come from the second note to phrase, not from the first one always, which as percussionists I hear it unfortunately quite too often. So especially early music, it's very elegant, come from the second note, not from the first one. Listen to the end of the phrase before, which in that case finishes on the one. Bum 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 bim 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 body. So the time which you take before connected, you not all the time obviously, but the tendencies how you play it right now is always a bit very stop and go. Yes. And be a bit more elegant sometimes, especially in the beginning, because the idea in the end, this is the thing, in the end what you create with it is you create a lot of tension. It gets very excited, right? And this is good, this is what we need, but not all the time. Right? So
exactly, yeah. It's, you cannot also like, it just started, you cannot already stop in the second beat or something like this, right?
Yes,
Sometimes you need a longer line to get the message through better. Yeah,
absolutely, and especially if it's basically just a chord, and then you have the first melodic phrase coming down. Enjoy, this is the thing, and then you can progress, because the chords are progressing either way, and then you can move, get more excited, right? Other than that, again, fantastic. Ornaments, beautiful. Let's go to the second one. Good, nice. This one is a very tricky one because it sounds so easy and it's so difficult.
Yeah, it needs to be childish in a way, like easy menuet dance, you know. And you need to just you know, just play it. It shouldn't sound virtuosic. It should just be, you know, just imagine the chord and that's it.
Yes, and I wanted to go into this topic actually with you. Personally, for me personally, it's a bit too fast. It gets a bit too because we know percussion, so we know where the difficulty is. It's in the right hand. So immediately when it's getting difficult, we have this tendency to tighten the muscles, and then especially the lateral, they get faster rather than broader, unfortunately. And you have to probably work a little bit against your tendency in this sense, because the tendency goes forward. But personally, I would take the tempo a bit slower.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So if you come more from the structure, more from the bass structure, then you can enjoy maybe a bit more the soprano rather than doing a fantastic job on hitting the right notes and making the music on top. But this is the thing, enjoy more. This would be fantastic. Enjoy more and take more time in enjoying this actually. Then the written virtuosic melody in the turn, this has to be heard, because I just hear wah. But if you come again from the cembalo, it's a very percussive, sorry, I'm speaking so much that it speaks out. When you come from the cembalo, you have to be very brilliant in the sense. And we have to understand the notes, right? And therefore, maybe take a bit more time, and therefore you have more control maybe in the fingers, that it sounds more clear. Material is another topic. It's always very individual. Maybe also something harder, but then again you have less sound, so it's always plus and minus. You have to evaluate for yourself. What's very obvious here is the bass line, if you hit it in the center or if you hit it on the edge. There it's very obvious because you have basso continuo, or so that's very very clear. There's just two voices. Also having two different material, good choice. It basically just maybe in the Menuet 2 it matches, but especially in Menuet 1 absolutely fine like this. As you did so beautiful ornaments in the first in the Allemande, I honestly thought maybe he's doing the same in the Menuet, because there is chances to ornamentate, German English, sorry, in the bass, in the to fill in the space in the repetition. Not in the first one, obviously, because you're presenting the piece, but to diversify the repetitions would be very nice. So I know it's very difficult in the right hand. Maybe you find the time to implement them in the bass line. Also that it gets more horizontal rather than vertical, right?
It's not bum 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 ba da yeah, of course. Yeah, this is probably the next step to evolve it, right? Now it's kind of bare bones in a way.
Yeah.
I also was struggling, you know, because Menuet 2, when they play it on the cembalo, they take off one of the keyboards and only one of them rings, so it's a thinner sound. But here, at first I was thinking, what do I go more towards the rope? But then you have to play the whole Menuet 2 almost on the rope, and that is kind of risky. It's a bad sound. So I just decided to like lead into it powerfully and actually play the second Menuet even more, how do you call this, gallant, in a more gallant style, even more compared to going in
it's actually
because that's hard to pull off. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach. It's actually nice. The thing is, with the cembalo, they have just by nature more sound, more resonance than the marimba. So you have to find a fitting translation in a way. So maybe if you take the resonance out, is already you make your space of phrasing smaller and smaller. What you have to do is expand your possibilities as much as possible, that we hear the extremes. Then we have to imagine the phrase again, right? So the same here. If you go to the bass, that you maybe articulate a bit more, bum, 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 right? That we have a bit more the cadence, bum, be. If we go to the tonica again, that it gets more length rather than a short one from the 5. Things like this. So again, it's early music with a lot of rules. On the contrary, we have to find the very individual translation of it because it's a different instrument. But honestly, I like it. I also like your approach, and this is nice to see that you have a lot of ideas and you implement them. In the menuet too, honestly, I would be a bit more, yeah, reserved, maybe. A bit more, less than that, but more a bit further away, a bit more hesitant, more elegant, as you just said it as well. It's just an idea. Again, also based on the sound setting and everything, based on the
I
instrument.
agree completely. Yes.
But it's a different character. It's also different motive, and also the whole structure is vertical and not horizontal, right? So in that sense, try to separate the menuets as much as possible. And
yeah, I know. Ideally, it would be to change mallets, right? But you cannot. You disrupt the flow of it too much if you take the extra 3 seconds. So I don't really have the option. I tried, and it doesn't really work. So you have to make do with what you have.
Yeah,
and
you can
find
solve
another
it.
way.
You can solve it technically for sure. Be a bit more less with the own weight of the mallets. So the problem what we hear a lot is if people they want to be without force, they just have the whip because they let the mallet free, but then you get the whip, so it gets a very sharp sound. So you have to sometimes be a bit more controlled and therefore have less weight into the bar and more controlled sound, in fact, to be a bit more further away.
So you kind of like not you break this, you slow down the speed by controlling it with the arm when you go in, right?
Yeah. Rather than this, even if I just let the mallet free, then based on if it's you get to the center of the mallet, then you get already too hard or too direct or without resonance, whatever the tendencies might be. But if you are in charge and you lead it on with the arm, then you get weight, less attack. You have to see. But I think especially for the menuet, could be a bit more further away in that sense. Other than that, again, was nice seeing, especially ornaments, fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, great.
All right, great job, Jan. Very nice. We were going to go with Burke, but I'm not sure where he is. So we're going to let's go with Danny. Hey, buddy.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, all good. So the floor is
hello.
yours. Once I do your video, if that's okay.
Thank you. Yes.
So yeah, just introduce yourself and what you're going to play, if that's all right, Danny.
Okay. Hello, Kai. It's very nice to meet you. I'm Dane. I'm from Croatia, from Zagreb. My current teachers are Igor Lešnik and Ivana Bilic. And today for you, I'm going to play Side by Side, a piece I'm sure you know very well. So we can go ahead.
Yes, let's go into it.
All right, let's have a little listen.
Good, nice, cool. You know what I really like from interpretation is the range of dynamic. Actually, it's very nice to see that you go really until the edge on the drums. A lot of people are always staying somewhere in the center or middle range center, and especially in side by side, I think it's very important because it's very minimalistic in a lot of passages. Actually, that we have a lot of decisive overtones, decisive sound in the end. So this is especially in the beginning and also in the end how you do it, exactly like this. The beginning is a bit too fast for me. I think the indication is around 180 beats per minute
Okay.
for basically 3/16. And the important thing for this piece is be very clear with the rhythmical structure, because when it shifts, this is the sensation. Something like this. So always have the 16th in your mind running like a metronome in the end. And the faster you get, the more we get this falling in one direction feeling. But the sensation, if you manage to be more on the spot, more stable, then you have a lot of possibilities afterwards. Because if you get, again, if bam 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 bam, then it gets a little bit too open and it feels like you're on the ship, and it should not be. It has to be very square, especially in the beginning. This would be nice. The drums, especially bongo and conga, very nice. You can think of maybe tuning the bongos a bit higher, that they get a bit more articulation because they have more tension. So right now you're fine. So again, this is just about personal taste. But personally, I like bongos a bit more high because it's 7-inch, 8 inches space. So if you decrease the tension on the skins, then they get a bit more muffled and lower and damp. And especially in this piece, they have to be sharp and brilliant rather than right. So it helps actually your interpretation.
I agree.
Just it's not again, it's not too low how you played it in the recording, but maybe you realize that you have a bit more possibilities in your interpretation because the instrument responds in a harder and a more direct, also a bit more raw nature, which is a natural skin. So it gives you something back, right? And coming then from the bongo to the conga, then continue the idea to the toms. And of course, it's always the question, if you use natural skin, if you use plastic skin, what's the tuning of it? It's always very individual. Plastic is fantastic also because it's more endurable, it's also cheaper, it's also more flexible. For the next piece, you tune it up, you tune it down, it hardly breaks based on it. Yeah. So this is good. I found it a little bit too thin, the plastic skin. Why do I say it? Because you get this metallic overtone. And as the function of the toms is actually the lower addition to the sound, to the music, right? Find a sound, or maybe you are using the pinstripes or use the dampening pad, something like this, that you get a little bit more to this fundamental note of the tom rather than this metallic overtone. What is also a possibility to use wooden hoops, for example, because the metallic hoops are always producing a lot of, or they support a lot of overtone, metallic, very high. And if you use, for example, wooden hoops, they're blocking them basically. So it gets a little bit more of a muffled tendency, but just a tendency. Things like this. find solutions, because in the end, we all know this piece, but in the end, first of all, the audience which you will perform it for is not going to be just percussionists. So for them, it's going to be new, also the very first time. And then it's fantastic, then it's new. And second of all, even if it's percussionists you're playing it for, and we know the music, we still want to hear your interpretation. And personally, this on percussion instruments is a very dear topic to me, on drums, because this is the most fantastic thing for me in percussion, because you can create your own music, your own tonality, based on the music, on the piece, of course, you're going to play, but in which relation you're putting the bongo to the conga to themselves, the toms. It's extremely individual. And also for you, if you have the same set and you play it 10 times, it will be 10 times a different tuning, because it's 7 instruments or 6. So it changes. And see this very carefully and very, I would even say wholly, because this is your personal trademark in the end, especially in the percussion scene, but in a bigger picture, the same. And the same then in the matter of when you have the bass drum, for example, because of course the bass drum is, we use a kick drum, so it is from the drum set, but the sound of the kick drum is too hard. We can't come from the right. What we need is more orchestral sound, because it's a one note, very decisive, and you need to create length. Not like a clap, but more. It has to be more substantial. So again, here, find the right skin in the end, or also when you have the pedal, find the right head in the end, right?
Yeah.
What I'm doing sometimes, if I don't have the right adapter, then I'm just using a piece of like cord, something like this, just to wrap it around. You put the scotch tape around, and you have already a second or even a third layer, and you get again less percussive, more resonant on the bass drum as well. So be a bit more decisive in this sense. The other thing, again, in the piece, I think what would be a good idea, read again very careful the notes, the scores, that you really are aware what's the rhythm, because sometimes the relation is not correct. So be very aware how many 16ths you have. This is all compact and very, very sincere in the sense. Other than that, again, nice to see you doing a lot dynamics. This is the most difficult part actually in this piece, because it's a lot of things happening, a lot of shifts as well, but it's nice that you go to the edges. This is good. The stick you turn, you have like a 5A stick probably, right? The drum set
Yes,
stick 5A.
similar, yes.
Yeah.
Similar, yes.
Maybe you find a stick which is having a bit of a bigger diameter, that you have a bit more
Okay.
volume possibilities too. Because you can, even if you have a mallet with a bigger diameter, you can still go to the edge on the drum, and you have this brilliancy sound as you just did it in the recording. But if you have it in a bigger diameter, you have more volume, especially in the higher sound range, actually. So this was something I was thinking. I mean, you don't need to play the material I'm using. I have like 1.5 or even 2. It's very thick diameters. Sometimes even the normal hickory, but a little bit more like taiko, but small, has already a lot of again, more weight or something like this. So find maybe also based on the material your possibilities. It's also a question if you want to have a round head, or if you want to have 90 degrees stick in the end, finishing like this straight. It all changes in the end. So you know the piece and you play it good, and now you need to think on make it more individual. This was what I was thinking in your case.
Okay. Okay.
But other than that,
Well,
fantastic.
okay, thank you. Well, this was actually recorded like almost a year ago, and I haven't played it since then. So this is all great feedback to put it back in my repertoire, because I'm going to put it back and prepare it for a competition in Finland, the Majaoja competition. So that's the next step. And these are all exactly comments I needed for bringing it back and making it more than it was. So thank you very much.
Yes, of course. Cool. Then all the best for the competition.
Yeah, Danny, we have a little time if you want to, if you have any questions.
So, well, just I was wondering how do I say this? With your career and with your past, what do you have some special approach to competitions? Like, do you make it different when you play for? Well, of course you do when you play for competitions and concerts. But what how do I phrase this? What helped you, and what was the approach that? This is all very hard to phrase.
Just shoot.
Yeah, like what's your approach to a competition, to put it like the simplest as possible, I guess?
I mean, first of all, it's always a very individual topic because I'm working different in work ethics, but also on stage for sure than you. So the most important is you have to be authentic. So it all starts, for example, on the program. You have to find a program which is fitting to the competition, but even more important, fitting to you, because in the end, you are the important or the interesting part on stage, right? So because the pieces, the jury will hear 10 or 20 times more, but they want to hear your interpretation. And for example, if you play a piece which, for example, somebody told you, but you don't feel connected to the piece, is very difficult. And of course, especially in a study concept, you have to get in touch, for example, to new music which you don't know, also where you felt maybe alienated first of all, but maybe just over the course of time and getting in touch to the music, you feel connected and you develop this understanding. So always feeling alienated and saying like, this is not my thing, is the easy way and this is not possible, for example. But especially in a competition, you need to know what you want to talk about, musically speaking, right? And because in the end, this is your presentation. You have to present yourself in a way where you feel comfortable and where you want to share and express yourself. And in that way, if you feel good in that sense, in this genre, in this idea on stage, then also the public and especially then the jury will also understand you better, right? In the end, especially competition concerts is a different thing because, of course, the repertoire is less individual. It's a bit more careful in competitions. It's also, especially first rounds, less don't go over the top and say this is me and you have to eat it, because then most of the time the jury is going to tell you like it's a bit too much, maybe read the scores careful, blah blah. So be very secure, especially in the first rounds, on the material, that you're aware of the composer's intentions. On a later point, you have, I think, more freedom. And this is the thing, in a concert context, you have especially to take this kind of freedom, because it's, again, nobody cares if you play a rebond in 120 or 140 or 60. In the end, if you do it solid, the public will love it because you love it. In a competition context, you will have people knowing and playing this piece themselves and marking you down for it. So be a bit intelligent in this way, right? This is, I think, the biggest difference. Again, on
Yeah.
the performative aspect, it's the biggest difference. You have this freedom. You have to, in fact, for a concert, take this freedom. It's very more liberating in this sense.
Yeah, for me, the problem, not really the problem, but a problem for me was that always when I play at the concert, I can let free, like let go and play how I want and not think about it. But when I play at a competition, like yes, I can do my individuality and my phrasing and everything how I want, but it's more learned and controlled. And I know that's how it's supposed to be, but I always have the problem of finding the right balance, because I'm always worried that exactly what you said, that it won't be too much and then you're at the other end of the problem. So that's something I'm trying to learn a bit more, how to not think about it too much, because then again it's not what you really want. You can't be thinking
Yeah.
and sitting. That's not music. You thinking and music is relative. So and just finding the right balance to not be too much, that's something I'm trying to work on. And I hope that like this summer I have a concert tour during along the Dalmatian coast, and I hope that will, like, of course that will help me with the concerts, but I hope that will help me with like figuring out what do I want to do at a competition without thinking about it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think I do. In the end, also being on stage and performing is something which you have to train. And it is not just about a competition or a concert. It's in fact the same thing of you being on stage alone and people waiting and waiting for you, and them they want to be mesmerized by your performance, and you have to be also able to share this and also to do this on the spot. And especially,
Yes.
honestly, also over the corona pandemic and no concerts and everything, I know myself, and I also know from students, it's a very difficult time since then, because there was basically 2, 3, 4 years no possibilities, or of course lesser possibilities. And again, being on stage is something which is not happening and you're functioning 100% secure. It's something you just have to be exposed to, and you have to be aware of what happens, what does happen to you on stage as a person. And again, if you have a concert tour, for example, is fantastic, because then you have the repertoire and you're able to perform it more a couple of times. So this is actually the best possibilities for a learning curve, and you see it yourself how to get
Yes.
used to, and you get a flow. So actually, this is fantastic. Don't see it as two separate things, honestly. So the idea has to be made, what I just said before, for a competition or for a concert, but this is just homework. In the end, it's the same result, because you on stage presenting your interpretation, your music, right?
Myself, yes. I agree. Yeah.
And also don't get too passive or too stiff just because it is a competition. It's even the opposite. So again, the framework is established. This is your homework, but then on that, enjoy and be open, and also there doing mistakes. Honestly, if we're hesitating and we want to be everything, we want to play it correct. Out of experience, I can tell you it's gonna sound worse, and you will still have wrong notes, and sometimes even more, because you're not secure of yourself and you're hesitating. So what I learned to do, not about a competition, in general in music, is you have to dare, you have to go, you have to invest, you have to even go a bit too much, and then it might result in a wrong note, or but it's still, from the outside perspective, so much more alive, that this is what music is about in the end. So then also it's again the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's a jury, it doesn't matter if it's a public, it's connecting at this point, right? So always invest, always go forward in this sense.
All right. Great advice. I can't think of anyone better to give advice.
Yeah,
on
yeah. For me,
competitions as well.
we never really had a problem at the competitions. It's just that this is something I see that I need to improve, and that I can improve, and that I want to improve. And exactly as you said, I think it shouldn't be seen as that is me or not. But yeah, kind of. It doesn't matter. Do they come to a concert or a competition? It should be.
I think we're losing Danny a little bit, but that's okay. We can. I think we're losing your connection, buddy, but thank you for your contribution and performance. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure there'll be a little time for questions at the end. So
yes, of course. Stay also later, and we can.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Nice one. All right, let's go across to. Let's have Jake now. Jake, are you there? Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Hello. Good.
Hey
All
there.
right. You know this drill by now. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, yeah. Hi. My name is Jake. I am from Columbus, Ohio, and I studied at Capital University. And this fall, I'm going to be attending for my master's the Eastman School. And today, I'm going to be playing Burret variations for you.
All right. Fitting to going to Eastman.
Yes, that's why I chose the piece.
Good, good. but such a long piece.
Mhm.
It's always like 10 variation with a different theme. It's almost the same amount of time, I think. It's also around 10, 11 minutes, something like this. So it's a
Yeah.
long piece, a lot of notes, a lot of different structures. So already getting it to the stage of performing it is a long way to go, actually. So based on the niveau what you have, it's actually nice to talk and nice to work with you here now, and I hope that I can give you a bit of feedback which might bring you on, because how you play it, basically everything is correct. You have some rhythmical structures where you have to maybe take a bit more care that you have the 16th, the 7/16 bars to the, if the meter changes, that you're very secure of the 16th, that the rhythmical structure stays the same. Sometimes I had the tendency, or I heard sometimes the 16th having a direction forward or backward, something like this. But in the end, it's small tendencies. The biggest topic for me always with vinyao pieces is creating, similar like to Khan again, to create a piece from beginning till the end, which has a direction where you don't create a tension hole. So German talk, maybe you know what I mean, that there's a bump, right? So always, it's very difficult in the sense to have always a pathway, like a tunnel to follow. And I think I was talking about this already a bit before. What's very helpful maybe is dare more in a sense of acoustic, be more forte, be more fortepiano as well, be a bit more extreme, more daring, more square, because especially with vinyao, you have a lot of action happening. There's a lot of structure and polyrhythms and layers, but then suddenly you have these elements where you have this bouncing ball natural elements appearing, and they bring somehow peace in this little sub-motive phrase, although they're not on the beat, but something is just in the air and brings somehow this balance at the same time, being not on the beats. And if you're a bit more extreme, more square, then suddenly you have this round structure appearing. It is therefore more important. You create more importance in that way, because again, suddenly you have something else happening. And this
sense.
in the end creates for us as audience a common understanding, and second of all, you're in the tunnel and we're always following you and not thinking of something else at this point. So be more extreme in this sense would be the biggest advice for me for you. Another idea in the end, of course, it's always very individual, and percussion talk, which I try to evade as much as possible, talking about mallets, but I still will enter the topic because you have a lot of voices, a lot of variation voices, the themes in the bass, in the upper, in the sopran, in the middle range. Separate them as much as possible. And that's the thing, in the moment where everything sounds similar, it's in the end up to you if you solve it technically or if you solve it with different material in the end. But what we want as audience is that we hear the themes or the motives individually as they are also written, right? What is accompanying, what is leading voice. And again, this is the thing. Either you solve it technically, more tension, less tension, a bit more brilliant, precise, more resonant in the bass, especially when you have the octaves, maybe. Bom, bom, bom. I wrote it down in the middle somewhere. Then you have this ostinato, beep, beep, more like small glocken bells in the upper region, a bit more brilliant, but less in dynamic. And so this is the thing: solve it either technically in separating, be more controlled, and like snapping fingers, and in the bass more open, or even then supporting it with changing materials, adapting, having more soft, medium to hard. It's again very individual, but as much as separation possible is very, very helpful in this piece. What, just out of curiosity, the material is the same, or it's also alternate?
Yeah, they're all the same. They're
Yeah.
the Van Cise M113s.
Yeah. So maybe, because I think he also has different models for regions, maybe you can even adapt there and see. Again, it's always so individual, and I'm basically trying to evade these mellow talks as much as possible, because it's always a wrong idea of thinking the whole interpretation is solved just with changing materials, or that a fantastic sound is created just by having good material. It's absolutely the opposite. You have to be in charge. You have to be technically, I always say, on the driver's seat, and the wheel is your material, which drives the engine in the end through the piece. And what never has to happen, for example, is to be on the passenger seats. Also an example, because especially with rattan, if you have rattan which is bent in different directions, we see it sometimes that people are not in charge of their own music anymore. So then the rattan takes over. So it's always about, in the end, about us artists having a material which works for us, and having then creating this sound, reproducing the interpretation in the end. So maybe also for you, search and see what material is the perfect medium to translate your ideas. Other than that, honestly, I didn't have so much to say. Again, if you have this broad bass, maybe a bit more open arm motion, which creates more open sound rather than being locked in. I know octaves are wide and you want to hit them exactly perfect, but they're hitting also a wrong note, but let go with the motion. It's in the end, like in the timpani, in the bass. If you go straight in, it's going to be not broad, but staccato. The same on the marimba, of course.
Yeah. One of the things that's been told to me a lot was my posture was kind of weird, and I think a big part of that was because the height was too low. So since I've raised it up, and that's kind of made it easier to achieve those kinds of things, because I always tried, but it just didn't feel right, and I was like, this is what I can do, and I need it to always work. So I think I kind of ended on that, but yeah, I totally agree, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And
in the end, I mean, since you started the posture talk, I would have never entered this talk too, because in the end, this is the thing. For example, why I initially decided I'm not going to speak about it, but I will do it now. Why I did not initially want to do it is because it works. So your performance is solid and your interpretation is valid. So in the end, this is the goal where we as artists aim, right? And if you look like this, or if you look like that, well, if it sounds fantastic, we should not care, right? If you get a feeling, for example, on the contrary, then, or you're getting told, or you're taking actively care, and this is a topic for you about posture, and it's not totally resolved, I can tell you also this. I realized that the marimba was comparatively low, and what happened then for you physically is that you put the feet further away, that you can lower your waist, because then you're closer with the hands at the keyboard. In the best position, you have a position where you can stand parallel with the feet, actually comparatively straight, not completely firm, but comfortable, and then you can move with the legs one step left, one step right, and you're still very close connected to the marimba. So in that case, yes, actually, the marimba for the video, honestly, a bit higher, because the same also, it's also about connected with sound. Is if everything is low, then the posture is low, and the sound is also a bit with the wrists in our case, or with you the same actually, bent. So, but if you elevate the stage, then the wrist is again less blocked, but less creates more sound, rather than being more open as well. Also physically being more approachable for the audience. So it's a full package in the end.
Yeah,
Personally,
that
I'm
makes
always
sense.
a fan of opening up the sound. So it means that I'm putting the marimba a bit higher, for example, because then I can go out easier rather than being in this locked in and then going out. It feels for me more disbalanced again, but that's very personal topic.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead. Oh, okay.
No.
So, a lot of what has been kind of explained to me with four mallet grip and just like playing throughout my entire life has been really rooted in marching arts, which I've constantly tried to break away from. But I think because of the place I grew up and the people who have taught me, that's influenced a lot of my perception of playing and stuff. So um, I guess I'm gonna have the chance to talk to people who kind of are more focused within other parts, but I'm kind of curious of like, what do you think I can do to kind of try and break away from that more and like on my own, like kind of figure out like, oh yeah, like I shouldn't be like doing this with my hands because like they're taught like to like be
Yeah.
very engaged, wrist up, and like I think that's kind of why that like felt natural to me is just because it's like, oh, like this is the thing I've been taught, this is the thing I like do, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, if it works, why breaking it apart? So
Yeah, I mean that's true.
the thing is, based, for example, what I saw from your waist on in your hands, it didn't look like you coming from marching, which I also see a bit more minimalistic, more repetitive, more straight in the motions. So I see you very open, very relaxed.
Okay.
And if you lock in the bass, well, you also know how to open it up. So that's absolutely fine. You can do it. I saw it. The only thing where I got you was basically your feet position, because you move like this. Personally, what I'm doing is I'm moving one step and another step. So it's more daring, or it's more decisive. And in the end, again, it's very individual. And again, if it works for you musically, we don't need to over exaggerate the whole topic. But if you, for example, see yourself distracted in your musical approach because you think of technique as a step in between, solve it from your feet, because based on where you stand, you have to adapt in your hands, in your upper body. So it all starts
That makes
basically
sense.
how you stand. And honestly, what always helps me is you decide to go to the bass, you step to the bass, you have something in the upper region, you go to the upper region, and then you also solve a little bit the yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 okay, now, yes. So be
Yeah.
a bit more now and not, now and not, and
Got it.
maybe that also. So personally, for example,
That makes sense.
when I started studying actually bachelor, when I went then to Linz, to Austria to study, I also had basically problems of positioning myself to the instrument, and basically through guidance and also through direct feedback, also to looking to other artists, how they're playing, also how it is somehow structured on the way from the hands to the keyboard, to the ears, in the end to the audience. I solved a lot of this problems which I had through that, looking and doing it myself. And some things take time. And also you have to realize that based on the material you have in your hands, a lot of self-reflection shifts. Because of course the whole idea and the whole technical translation changes from birch, then going to rattan, or you have rattan, you go to birch. So of course, then again, the motorics are interacting. But again, I have to say, I liked watching your video a lot. And as everything was translated, very nice to see. You also don't need to worry if this is something on your mind. It works fantastically musical.
Okay, good. Wait, do I have like time to ask like just one quick follow-up thing? To
Yeah, go on then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool, great. So when you say like when we're like talking about the feet, like when I'm going about trying to implement that, like for you, was it like an intentional, like when you're practicing, like, okay, I'm going to take a step right now, and then like that was just a trained thing and then it got easier with time? Or is it just like you're just like, no, I'm just going to take a step and then that's going to be what it is, and then it was kind of just like a learned ability through that? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a very strange topic actually, because it's very important for us, but always very difficult and individual to verbalize actually. The problem is,
that's what I've experienced.
Yeah, the problem, especially talking about marimba, is that it's so big. It's a huge instrument, and everybody of us has different arms and different heights and different wrists, so everything is individual to a certain extent. So we have to figure it out by ourselves. We can just get guidance by supervision from somebody else from the outside, but how to do it can just be by ourselves. You have to realize what happens if you stand like this, what happens if you stand like this. For example, me approaching the bass section, and it's the question if you have your arm parallel to you, it's a question if you have it like this, it's a question like this. And in the end, everything changes your sound, because the more open, flexible motion you have, the better chances for an open sound you have. That's natural. That's just physics.
That makes sense.
And if you step back, of course, you create tension. If you get closer to it, you're having an open, flexible arm. So this is the universal rule, which is also about any other instrument, not just about marimba or percussion. It's also for the other instrument sections. And then you can go from that point to find the space where you have the best sound, and you will realize you don't need to go up 4 steps to play the bass. You just make 1 and you lean with your upper body, because then you have a strong hold, right? You are still having 2 legs, and you can approach this, you can approach that. And even for me, because I'm like 171 centimeters height, I just need to make 1 half step and I'm in the total bass, and I go back and I take 1 half step and I'm in the soprano. So then you can approach everything. But again, you have to find it for yourself at this point.
Okay.
But come from the ear.
Yeah. So like when you say like lean, like you're leaning from like your like back, or are you like kind of leaning with your knees, or is it like a combination of like this?
It's in the end maybe like skiing. Yes, it's a nice example. If you lean to the mountain with the outside knee or with here, and it's similar for us. You have one which has more weight and you have one which has less weight, based on me focusing on the bass. It's the left leg which has more weight for me, and the same in the soprano, something like this, rather than being always centered and this is bass and this is bass, right? It's always in motion.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's an abstract topic. I know. I try to explain it always, but I also have to say it's, again, very individual and based on a grip and wrists and sound, especially material. Everything is adapting eventually.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Nice one.
Yes, well done. It's good.
Good job. Okay, Noah, are you there? Hey,
Hello.
the floor is yours.
Hey,
All right. So a little bit about me. I live in Dallas, Texas right now. I got my undergrad at the University of North Texas, and then I'm in my master's right now with Brian Zader at Texas A&M Commerce. And today I have two movements of reflections on the nature of water, movements 1 and 4.
good. Let's go into it. Good, nice, well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
I honestly don't have so much to talk with you, but we will find a lot, trust me. But the thing is, I basically just marked nice things. The sound actually was very, very crystalline, very decisive, very, very important to hear each note. And honestly, this is something which is a very dear topic to me. That we hear the notes on the marimba, because there's a lot of material, a lot of possibilities, and also a lot of different ideas, and each of them is valid, honestly. But mine is always that each note has to be heard actively rather than imagined. And this is therefore what I enjoyed in your performance very much, actually, is that everything is decided and everything is clear. And also then if we listen and if we look to your performance, everything is clear. So then we don't need to imagine, or we don't need to talk about technique or something like this, because everything is self-explanatory. And this is what we want, not just about the percussion context, but then about an artistic context. We just want to have a solid information which we can then take, or not like, or like, this is then up to you, up to us as audience. But the message itself is extremely clear, formulate. So fantastic. In the end, it's small things which I still want to talk with you. If, for example, you record yourself, this is not a bigger topic. If you record yourself and you have a black background, don't wear something black, because it's a bit chameleon camouflage.
Yeah, I make that mistake quite a bit. I don't know why I keep doing that. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being black dressed. It's fantastic. It's very elegant, but then you have to have a white background or something colorful or something like this. You're a solist, so in the end, you have to be seen. You want to be seen. In fact, don't cover yourself by the background. Don't be covered. In the end, there's also a topic if you play with an ensemble, if you play with an orchestra, if you, for example, play in a symphony concert, the dress code in the orchestra is the tuxedo or the Frack, we say in Germany. It's a very German term, which is, of course, an elegant dress, but black and white. So if you're dressed completely black as solist, you're less obvious on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So also it's starting also there, the way we dress, the way we are seen, and also based on how we are seen, we are also heard. Sometimes there's a lot of action and we don't realize as audience what happens, but if we see it, then it's easier to understand what actually happens in fact. So if you camouflage with the background, it's making it a bit more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Small things, small details, which can make a bigger impact at this point. But just for you to know, just with the recording is a different topic, but still. For the first movement, in the end, everything fantastic. I just thought in the roll from the bass to the soprano, a little bit less repetitive. It was a bit too harsh for me. I would personally take it more phrased, rather than single note, single note, single note, and finish would create more horizontal lining. Also, if you take it on a very elemental level, as this piece also is written, it connects and as much as drops of water you create, as much as you also create the water running down the mill and the river, something like this, which is more horizontal. And then again, you have, so be very specific, especially in this kind of pieces which are based on elemental ideas from the nature, which image you want to create. And then you can also totally decide. And again, smallest things for you, really nice.
Thank you.
For the fourth movement, it's personal note. Personally, the ostinato groove in the left hand, I would take it a bit more passive, meaning less active, less evolving, and more gradual. Why? Because again, you have to separate the accompaniment and melody, and then in this piece there's elements where the voices are very close together, so it's difficult to separate them, and sometimes you can also decide to not separate them. Then there may be one piece, one melodic line for some small amount of time in a submotive. But for example, if you start bum, bim, bim, bum, bum, bim, bum, 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 it personally for me is a bit too agile, too alive, because it's an ostinato. The ostinato is a fundament, right? And that's why personally I like it more as a subtle start. Then you have the sopran having a layer to place on top. This is maybe something which you might consider for the future. The repetitive element, when you have it in 16th and then in triplets, there you have to be a bit more precise, because the 16th are not they are also a bit more, and the triplets are too slow. You have to be faster. So the right hand, left hand has to just, I also would just, you have to shake it off, shake it out of the wrists, right? Instead of then it gets a bit too stressed and too fast and too hard. But if you open the sound, you're in time, and also you open up the sound in the phrase, so it's beneficial in both ways, either way. But come from the metronome side in the sense, because you are shifting 1/16 basically, if we want to count it. And that's the thing, as much as percussion talk this might be, it's very important for this piece, because it's very rhythmically structured, and if some motions are suddenly out of the rhythmical relation, we feel it and we hear it that it's not supposed to happen. So there we have to be a bit more specific. Other than that, personally, I would not take the sforzato in the end too active, too loud. I always see this end more cheeky, right? Because it could end already before, but then you just say ba, ba, bee, yeah. So it's a bit more funny. It's a funny element for me. So if it gets too voluminous, it gets immediately dramatic. And it's just 4 note progressions, and that's it. So this is why personally I always prefer this end in a more charming way. Slim, charming, also sforzato more in a way of articulation rather than dynamic, right?
Yes, yeah.
And again, it's in the end small personal impressions, because the nice thing with you is the sound, the technique, the ideas, everything is there, everything is very clear. So this was very obvious for me.
Thank you.
Was,
Yeah,
well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If you don't mind, I have a couple follow-up questions.
Please, yes.
So for that ending, I agree. I do think it could have been a little more subtle, like listening back on that. Do you think that the peak of that phrase is on the roll or on the final note? Like, do you think like it should be the rolls, the loudest thing, and then decay into the final note, or lead to the final?
I think basically how you played it in the recording, bum, bum, bee, yeah. The last one, the last one is a cheeky end also. Like if you would orchestrate it in the orchestra, I just lost the word.
Pizzicato?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. In a pizzicato, short, right? Because it supports the cheekiness of the motive, rather than being broad and romantic and with rubato and intensity. Personally, it's for me not in this manner, but more like that, more square, right? Because in contrast, the whole movement is very broad, very in a unrhythmically, polyrhythmical way, but very horizontal. And then is separating this in the end. So the end is separate by itself, but if you phrase it also in that way, then it's getting even more obvious what's the idea about it in the end.
Yeah. And then one more question. So this recording was a little bit old. I used this for my master's auditions, but I'm thinking of bringing the piece back so that because it's often in the semifinal like lists for a lot of competitions. So I want to bring this piece back but play all the movements. Do you have any overarching or like big tips for approaching the entire work like as a whole?
I mean, in the end, it's a fantastic piece, which is suitable not just for competitions, but especially for concerts in a bigger perspective. I mean, even, Jacob Druckmann being a very established composer, especially in the US, actually, being a Pulitzer Prize winner, if not totally mistaken, like Schwantner, by the way, as well, which is therefore approachable through many perspectives, not just in the percussion scene, where it happens obviously for a lot of competitions, but in the bigger picture for real concerts, is a very suitable piece. It gets very interesting if you play all 6 movements, because it's a big challenge for us as performers, because each of them is very minimalistic, very repetitive, very structured, and then they're very different from each other. So it's a big piece at this point of 18, 20 minutes, if I'm not totally mistaken. But would be a fantastic choice for you. In a competition, the same in the end. It's a piece which is a bit more minimalistic, so you have to know your homework technically, how to create the right interpretation, how to have the right notes. It's less liberating as other pieces might be as a performer perspective, but you're surely aware of that based on how you also performed it in a recording as well. Recording is also a very specific situation where the room always feels smaller than it actually is. So you know what I'm talking about. In the end, feel or express yourself how you feel. That's the thing. Especially with Druckmann, especially with the elements of clear images. Also, I don't know anymore the number of the movement. If it gets more alive and more in waves, create your own idea of, not that it's a technical exercise, it should never result in a technical repetition of one hand and going like this, but it's about the musical idea. Something is in motion because it's about water elements, something very natural, in fact, right? So also for you, despite competition, concert, it doesn't matter, create for each movement, I think, a very personal idea of the element and translate it with the music, transport it with the music.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. Other than that, again, fantastically played. I don't have to say something negative at this point.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Nice one. Good job, Noah. Well done. All right. So I think this leads us to our last one, actually, because unfortunately Bert can't make it. So we're going to go to Jack. Hey, Jack.
Hello.
How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all good. Hi, Kai.
Hey. I think your internet is a bit frozen. Is this me or?
No, I think it is a little bit of a weak signal, but
Oh, well, I will try my best.
that's all right. We can hear you. So
Yeah, we hear you, and we see a good collection. We see a good collection of cactus in the back. Nice.
Good. Yeah, that's the most important thing.
All right, the floor is yours. I'm going to cue your video up.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm Jack. I've just finished my first year at university in Newcastle, and I'm 18, going on 19, and the video that you're going to see is from my final recital a few weeks ago, and it's a piece that I've been kind of working on all year. So yeah, I hope you enjoy.
All right, let's go for it. Cool. Yes. Nice. Well done. This was from your finals, right? You just said it.
By end of year, yeah, it's not the
Yeah.
final like of the grade, just for end of the year.
Okay. Okay. I see. No, all in all, nice. Nice. Well done. I see in the end that you have a clear idea of the music. Personally, I think you could express yourself more in your ideas. So never feel reserved. So for example, what I saw is that you took care of playing everything correct, which actually also worked. But personally, what I always want to see as audience or as teacher guiding students is people letting go and expressing themselves through music rather than taking care of how to play the music correct. And in the end, this is nice. You're still young and you're in the beginning of your studies, and there's so much things to experience and to do. And this is the main advice also from my side to you. Express yourself in the way you feel and find a fitting translation in the music. In this piece, for example, go more in a rubato, go more forward, go more backwards. You have a strong idea in the upper region. You're more brilliant, more melancholic. In the bass, you're more strong. So this is all aspects which I see and which I totally approve. And now it's up to you how to be more specific. For example, in the bass, you have to, on a technical level, then at this point, realize how to perform in the best way possible. Personally, you want to make it intense, you want to make it strong. This is what I see, and this is absolutely right. But on a technical level, it's a bit too stiff, it's a bit too hard. So this is why it sounds very percussive. But in the bass, what we want is we want volume, you want this orchestral big sound, rather than knuckle fists on the cheeks of some other people. So open the technique at this point, open the arms, the hand, especially the wrist has to follow the motion of the arm. And you have to listen to what actually happens when you do what, when you're controlled or when you're more open with the wrist. And especially there where you want to have this big sound. I approve too. Where you have this big sound, then open the wrist. This is very important. The other thing, I hope you can hear me because you're frozen on my screen.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, you can. Okay, perfect. In the beginning, in the introduction of the piece, maybe play the arpeggi more active. It has the impression to me that you let the mallets a bit falling to the mallet, you let the mallet fall into the instrument rather than play the notes in a way. Personally, I like arpeggi if you take more time. Bum, 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 ra, ba-ra-yi, rather than rap.
Yeah.
Right? Because arpeggi are a fantastic musical element because they leave you the choice which notes are important in the chord. And it doesn't need to be all the time the leading sopran melody. It can always also be da 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 dum ba da. It can go from the bass, So it gets very individual at this point. It's similar to ornaments as a musical element. It has very individual. It leaves individual freedom in the end for us performers, and especially in the introduction or in this piece, being also more horizontal in structure, more notes aligned next to each other. Ornaments are a very elegant, arpeggi are a very elegant element how to implement chords. Because chords by nature, if you play them together, they create a very vertical structure, a very strong downbeat, right? rather than using arpeggi, which create a lot of length, a lot of horizontal line. So this is why they are far more elegant in the music. So play them maybe a bit more broad.
Okay.
In general, then on a technical level, dynamic, by the way, dynamic, very nice. It's very nice to see that you're taking care of what is piano, what is maybe a bit more melancholic, or what is loud and what is dramatic. So this works beautifully. But on the matter of playing loud and more forte, fortissimo maybe, you have to take care or realize what's the limit of the instrument. Because as higher gets the amplitude, as more you need to basically take care not to be too much in control at this point, because then the sound gets too hard. So the thing for us, especially in dynamic, is the tendencies in piano is that if we let the melody fall, that it's too undefined, because we don't get to the core, we don't hear all the details. So we have to work the piano. And the same also for the forte. If we have just a higher amplitude and we just let the melody fall in the instrument, it gets too raw, it gets too hard. So you have to be aware of these tendencies and work them then out. The biggest problem what we have on mallet instruments is that, or similar also on the timpani, is that we have to have a set of material which works both for a bass and both for upper sopran area. Although the material is 4 times the size in the bass than it is in the upper range. So you have to have a technique, or you have to have a material which is making these kind of physical tendencies possible then, or that they work for you and not against you. So this is why you have to have a solid technical idea of how much you can force, how much you need to relax based on the dynamic. But you're still young, so this is nice to see. You're still young and you're at the beginning of your education, and you have still this space to really proceed and this pathway to go on. It's nice to see.
Cool. Thank
But
you.
from an interpretation, from this perspective, was actually nice to see. I hope your teacher was happy seeing you in your final exam this year.
Yeah. He said he thought that was the best I've played it, which is always good to hear.
Yes, nice. Especially in the beginning, I said it once before, especially in the beginning, take more time in the introduction. Take more time for the arpeggi, but also for the melodic line it creates and it goes around, that it is more round rather than square. This is because it's basically a ballad, right? And ballads are never supposed to be square. They're always very round, very intimate, very pure somehow as well from the idea. And I don't know, always when I see houses which have a lot of corners, they don't look pure, they look very structured and very intelligent. But for example, I don't know, football now with the championships, by the way, is very natural. It is round. It's, if you speed it musically forward, you need to take time, because what you go forward, you have more time in the end. So it's always this like waves in the end. So go more forward, go more backwards is the advice for you.
Okay, cool.
Other than that, you have some questions?
Yeah. How do you go about like choosing repertoire for a concert or a recital, or like, I don't know, but kind of what's your process in selecting pieces for that kind of thing?
It basically, the initial step is that you have to realize what is the context. Is it, for example, a new music concert series which you're invited for, or is it based on a composer's death annual or something like this? So find the starting point. and then you can move on. In the end, you have to realize, or you have to know, that percussion is a comparatively young instrument if we see it in the classical music context. So whatever we do, it looks and sounds exotic most of the time.
Yeah.
So use it as an advantage and not as a disadvantage. So find linking points, for example. Find linking points where people in the music scene can relate to your idea from the program, or to the instruments, or that they relate to the composer. Some students or some participants from the world percussion group also played some volans, for example. Is also, if you have composers which are known in a bigger context, this helps, for example, getting your program in a bigger context in the music scene, for example. Marimba as well is an exotic instrument. In fact, it's, what is it, 60 years, 70 years, as we know it, with 5 octaves, with comparatively less program written for it. So also there, find connecting points. Or you go completely against it and you say, I play very programmatic music from percussionists, written for percussionists, something like this. So always know in which context you are going to perform it, and also you have to realize what is your message you also want to share. But also that is something you just realize in playing and learning as much repertoire as possible. Then you can really know and decide what you like and what you can do best and something like this. But until you're not through this whole process, it's hard to know by yourself if you haven't experienced it yet.
Yeah, this has been really good as well. Like hearing everyone else's pieces and hearing you break it down as well, and kind of how they could be played and different interpretations. And yeah, it's been really
yes. Also listening to colleagues, and also not just about percussionists. I learned personally the most from other instrumentalists on a bigger context musically. It helps a lot. So as much as we have to practice in the cellar all by ourselves, you have to also listen to music outside of the bubble. It's but it is never enough just to do one thing. Also to say, like, I'm going to concerts and I play with other musicians, so I'm getting better on my own instrument. Also difficult. So we have to make all our homework by ourselves, and at the same point or later on learn from the bigger context.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thank you.
All right. You got any further questions, Jack?
I think that's pretty much everything, actually. Yeah, it's been really helpful.
All right. Great. We'll
Nice.
bring everyone else on just for a final little chat. I don't know if Jake and Noah, are you around? Got any last parting
here.
questions?
Yeah, I have one to start off with.
Sure.
So, I think a lot of times in my life right now, I've been listening and looking to instructors for interpretation advice, and trying to play in a specific way to like achieve a certain goal, right? Like for me, it was playing the pieces I played to get into grad school the way that I needed to play to get into grad school. And I think a lot of times for me right now in my life, I've kind of because of that, allowed myself and what I hear and like really truly feel and believe in kind of go to the wayside, because I wanted to like make sure I got into the school I wanted to get into, and like I would achieve the certain goals I wanted to get into. And I'm sure and we have all experienced this to a certain level. But I really want to push myself in the next 2 years to try to break that, and to kind of explore my own voice a lot more. So what are some things that you've done in your life to kind of break away from that and really kind of sell yourself on the stuff that you play?
Yeah, that's always the very big picture and a very intense topic actually. But it's nice to bring it up. It's honestly something everybody needs to ask themselves, because we have to blend in. We have to fit in the how's it called in English? Fit in the picture, fit in the box. It's a
Yeah.
percussion scene. It's a percussion scene, so we can't invent rules new. We have to follow pathways which already existed before. And at the same point, everybody's preaching individuality. So that's somehow very contradictory, isn't it? So
No, yeah,
it
definitely.
is difficult at this point in a way of finding yourself, but you have to continue a structure like 20 colleagues next to you. Personally, I learned how to be individual in being very specific in interpretation, although I heard colleagues next to me playing the same piece. On also, for example, never evade comparison. Never evade comparison, because first of all, you always will be compared, and you will compare yourself, and the whole world is comparing, and with social media, everybody's comparing anything. It's a very strange world nowadays in this sense. Before our times, without internet, it was a concert and you heard, or it was just CDs or vinyl. So everything was a bit more holy. Now everything is available, right? And it's to a certain extent, we have to shut this internet out in a sense of being healthy and happy with what we do by ourselves. On the contrary, we still have to be aware of the interpretations from same pieces. Why do I say it? Because then you get more secure on your own interpretation. You realize that, for example, the ideas from this person is very nice, or you realize that it works for this person, but you don't agree. And this makes you at the same point very secure on your decision. And the more you get these ideas of different versions, for example, you see, I don't know, YouTube reels of Beethoven Fifth from different conductors, and you realize how many different ideas there is with the same music. And the same happens in general in music. The music is already written, and we have to make a personal interpretation on it. So the approach is always something exists before us, and we just have to find our own translation in it. So filter, I think, is a good term. Filter what you want to see and what you want to hear, and then also why. Because just I don't know, playing for example, vignao, period variations by yourself is fantastic. And especially learning the piece, I would always recommend learn it by yourself, get to know it without listening to somebody's performance before, because it shapes your ideas. But then later on, I always did it when I knew the music, when I knew the ideas I had on first sight. Then it's about shaping, and sometimes it takes a lot of time of realizing what is your idea of this passage, or or what could it even be. Then you realize it from listening to somebody else or some pre-existing recordings, something like this. But again, that's then in the end the individual part. Also coming back to studies, we always have this repertoire and this semesters and the structure, and everybody has to run through it. But we want to come out individual. So that's somehow a strange system in a way. So even then, when you're in the system, just be aware, do the normal drill. And at the same point, it's very important for you to realize what is interesting for you, because that will be your personal trademark as a percussionist when you finish college. So is it, for example, John Cage in connection with Lou Harrison? Then you realize about Lou Harrison being with gamelan and Javanese music, East Asia, and you realize what is Eastern, Western tradition, and you realize what you can do, and you dig into it, and something like this. And maybe this is something you end up in a topic which nobody else around you ever entered. So this is something individual and still related to percussion, for example, something like this. So find, despite all these pre-existing pathways, individual ideas, hobbies, musical topics which you find interesting, and proceed. You can even use them then for your doctorate in America and the US.
So kind of like what you're getting along at, because like the way I've kind of approached learning any piece is to listen a lot, just because I've just always used my ear, because that's what's made the most sense to me to like learn a piece faster instead of trying to like read the sheet music, because reading is pretty hard for me. So I think so yeah, like I think there's definitely an element of me getting mixed in within like what I hear from other people rather than just what I hear and hear. But so I guess like what I'm like trying to ask is like not asking the question of like what it should be, but of what I think it should be, and then kind of like exploring that idea more, and then kind of just going from there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes you also realize, even for example, as an example, if your teacher is telling you you have to play it different, and you at the same time realize, but I want to play it like that, it's good, because it makes you very self-aware. And in the best case, you play it your way because it is musically making sense, right? So never go just with the head through the wall and say like, I want it like this, and then it's maybe a very inconvenient musical idea. So then it's of course a bad decision. But in a bigger picture, follow your mentors to the point that they can let you loose, because they put you with so much information, musical intelligence, technical solutions, and that the argumentation, the later process as teacher student, blurs into guidance, mentorship, discussion, maybe why you play what, why you play it in that way, things like this. But especially in the beginning of education, you can't go, because I feel like you have to follow, you have to know the structure, the ideas, the technical ideas, the musical ideas from teachers. And in the best case, then have more space from that point on, as this layer from you as an artist is established. So you have more freedom, more capacity to develop.
That makes sense. Yeah, so just not solely being like, okay, they said this, so that means I should do it. That's really hard for me, because I think I just get unconfident with what I feel like, and I'm like, oh, well, they know more, so my opinion is less correct. But
always reflect. People always have good ideas and also bad ideas, and it also is the same for professors. Just because we have titles doesn't mean that everything is gold, what we say. So be self-aware, even if it's from somebody superior. Be aware and be open. Reflect why he says or she is to be played like this, and then you maybe realize, fantastic, I didn't realize, but now I realize. Now I know what to do. And then the same, if you don't agree, then you also realize why not. So either way, it's always good to reflect.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? Yeah, Noah.
So a big thing you've talked about today, and that you've talked about in the past, is that learning a lot of repertoire is really important because it provides you context and experience when you learn something new, right? What pieces would you say taught you the most that you've learned?
Ooh, it's a difficult question because we have so many instruments. Personally, I learned most on the marimba, for example, from other instruments. So I take timpani and snare drum as my main resource in general, including the marimba, because as technical and as clear we have to make our mind about keyboard instruments, the physics are similar to snare drum, to timpani especially, which have more historical background than 60-year-old marimba or vibraphone, first of all. Or you take the the lute as instrument, or the cembalo as instrument as a reference, which have similar physical sound productions as our cool percussion instruments. And then I translated this in the music, in the pieces I'm playing. And you have to realize what makes sense where. So when you play Samu rotations, I was obviously not thinking of the lute or of the cembalo. But again, when you go to early music, obviously then it makes sense. But figure your key elements somehow in music. Personally, I practice, or I learned a lot from setup for marimba, because setup is very physical, as is the marimba. We have always these huge sets, and as precise, as brilliant we have to be on the classical snare drum, which is necessary for contemporary music, all these different sounds, instruments, objects. As close this topic was for me from classical snare drum, for example, then also setup was for me for the marimba. Bigger instruments, more arm motion, more, full body involvement rather than small, sharp ideas translated, which we obviously have to do the same, of course, on setup too and on marimba. But this was connecting points which I found, which made a lot of sense, because we have a lot of instruments to cover and a lot of sticks and materials, and everything has to somehow be in our hands, and it still feels different.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to find a common technical sense, I think. So a lot of practice pad for me too, because later when we have concerts, we don't have the marimba. We are not like the string instruments, and we can go in the German Stimmzimmer and practice in our wardrobe and then go on stage and play the same again. We have our instruments on stage and we have nothing to prepare on backstage. So we just have the practice pads, the snare drum, small instruments. So find a setting where you feel, the same, even if it is snare drum, and then go on stage with the marimba, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other than that,
all right, Jack, have you got a question? Are you there, Jack?
Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Final parting questions before we let Kai go and watch the. Actually, Germany not playing tonight, are they? It's Austria.
No.
Well, you'll be pleased to know Austria losing 1-0.
Really? But it's against who? Switzerland?
Turkey.
Turkey. Yes.
Yes, Jake.
I have a very silly general kind of thing to ask. Since I'm going into grad school, do you have any like advice for grad school? Because I hear it's just a lot more time to like play. It's a lot more focused on just like yourself as in like an artist rather than kind of like building you up from the start. So just like what to expect, I guess.
I think that the education structure in the US is very different than the structure in Germany or in Switzerland, where I'm teaching. So I would not dare of giving you a specific advice from my side, because I'm not in the picture in this sense. What I can just say to you is be open, be aware, learn, enjoy, experience. This is the most important. Don't be hesitant or get defensive if you get bad feedback. It's absolutely fine to not be good in things, but you need to hear it that you get better, right? So sometimes we have to face the truth of being very bad, and then you need to start from there. But I also saw colleagues which are evading this strong informations, and then they went with the flow through the studies, and then later on they had the final exam and the stress of their life, and some of them quit even music, and and it gets more and more dramatic if you don't face these facts. And again, we have so many instruments and so many different things to experience, to cover, technical and musical as well. And this is why it's absolutely perfect to be bad in something. But then and then you just have to have the will to face the truth, and then to move further. And then okay, and now I'm making my homework, and I make stick control until the end of the year, and I focus on left hand, right hand, whatever the issue might be. Right. This is, I think, the biggest strong intention in what it means to study. Be very, open, very self-reflective.
I think for me, it'd be like embrace time, because once you finish, and I know Kai will concur with me on this, but once you finish, you will never have the same amount of time to listen to music even, or practice, or embracing watching other people play, because life will commence, and it's completely different. That's why the live tour is quite good, because it sort of just teaches you about that next step. But certainly for me at college, that was the time that at that time I didn't realize, once I'd finished, I had to get a job and put all those things to the side, and I'd obviously honed all my skills, and that's the time to do it. And then there is a point where you don't do that anymore. You've got
it has just to work from this point. This is the thing, the homework has to be done, and then you for example, I don't have the space or the time to play marimba every day, but if you make the homework in your studies, you know what to do, and to be warmed up in very short amount of time. And same on timpani, for example. And also use college, university, use it as a resource actively of knowledge. Not just staying with percussion, go to the early music department, just listen in the best case to the lessons from them, just as as passive audience, just as listening. Because later on, when you're out of university, in fact, you're out of university, so you're not having this next room availability anymore. So use it as much as possible, basically.
Definitely. Cool. All right. Well, I think that about sees us to the deadline. So Kai, thank you so much for tonight. I really appreciate it. Tomorrow, pleasure. I believe tomorrow we are joined with none other than Nancy Zeltzman. So we're looking forward to catching up with Nancy tomorrow. But until then, Kai, thank you for all of your words of wisdom. It's been amazing to catch up with you and hear what you've offered the guys. And I know they've really appreciated it. So thank you very much.
Yes, pleasure.